recording this. So it's April 14th, and I've got some, as I've been doing each week, I just want to remind everybody that the intention here is to keep a positive flow going with everybody, and so I'm going to cover the astrology from starting right now, moving forward. And as you can see from the email I put out today, today has been kind of a, here's the chart for today right now. Let me just update it to the present time. And like what we talked about last week when we covered the week ahead, we talked about when the moon came into Capricorn and it joined up with Pluto, as you can see where I'm pointing to. Wait a minute, maybe I didn't share my screen. Let me share my screen. Share screen. Okay, so, okay. I hope everybody can see my screen now.
Yep, we can.
You can? Okay. All right, good. So as I was talking about last week when we did the meetup, I talked about that today would be kind of a paramount day. Well, it looks like we have another person. I just admitted him in, it's Raj. All right, okay, so I'm gonna have to do that if anybody else comes in. I'll have to stop and let them in. So welcome, Raj.
Thank you, Andrea. How are you?
Well, I'm doing okay. How about you, Raj?
Hanging in there.
That's good. That's what we're all hanging in there together, I guess, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I just started to talk about that today would be a day that would be kind of like a paramount day, kind of reminder of what has been, really testing us all this time, because the moon in Capricorn, the moon moved into Capricorn a couple days ago, and it joined up with Jupiter and Pluto. So it was reminding us of the, of the restrictions that we have, and what we're working on and what tools are available to us. And, I wanted to just kind of point that out because you can see that happening right here. And so it's been emotionally a day that we've, just had to really look at all the positives, find the positives, and realize that this is just a very powerful time of change, and that we're going to go through steps. Earth energy is about steps. We're taking steps in moving through this transformation. We can't go around it. We got to go through it. And as you can see, one of the reasons I was talking about is, you see where my mouse is pointing, is that Pluto, Moon, Jupiter are all in square to the sun as we speak, and it'll start passing by tomorrow. And the sun is typically, squares are challenging energies. They're things that slow us down. It's kind of like a divine, wait a minute, hold on, don't go fast, don't push this. And with the sun is our health, our well-being, it's our vitality. It's also our, our identity. And being in Aries is, so it's shining its light through Aries right now. And Aries is all about the self-movement, self-development, self-realization. It's a fire sign, so it can be like, I want to go. The sun says in Aries, I want to go, I want to move, I want to take action, I want to discover new things. But with all these squares right here, it's slowing us way down, and and it's just having to look at what it is that we can be responsible. What's responsible activity? What's responsible? What are the things that we can control versus the things we can't? And that is ourselves, and how we react to relationships, how we act to, different people's collaboration. And so, because that's where the part of the chart is at right now. And so I wanted to point that out. So anything that you can do to help yourself to move through this time, you know, is a very good, that's probably one of the best things we can do. And one of the good things I want to point out that's happening right now is we see Venus, the planet of resources. And I just want to remind everybody that this is universal astrology. So it means that this is what's affecting us as a whole. This is not a personal chart. This is, you know, a chart of what is affecting everybody from a universal standpoint. So it's, you know, we can take it and we can kind of work with that from a standpoint of all of us together. So I want to talk about Venus here. Venus is typically a planet that rules over resources, money, love, relationships, affection. It attracts, you know, we attract to us wherever Venus is in our personal charts. And so Venus right now is at, I'm circling it right here with my mouse. It's in Gemini. So it's communication that's keeping us all, you know, pulled together. It's communication, it's sharing our ideas. It's sharing resources, because that's what Venus is about, resources. And it's during a time of transformation as a whole. You know, everybody's got something that they're working on, and sharing knowledge, sharing ideas, sharing, you know, networking. That's what Gemini is about. So it's kind of, you know, it's not so much, the value here comes from knowledge, comes from communication, it comes from networking. And so I'm pointing out a trine right here to Mars. So this is something that's good, that's very helpful in the chart. Mars is planet of activity, and this is where we're at right now, just kind of a reminder. Mars is in Aquarius, which is Mars is all about our actions, our movement, our activity. It's what we desire, you know, and how we go about getting that. And being in Aquarius, Aquarius is the whole, it's the community, it's the, you know, it's how we strategize together. So there's some real nice energy that is really peaking right now around this particular area. And you know, and it kind of ties in with the sun in Aries, because Mars is the planet that rules over the sign of Aries. So it means that even though we're in a halt from being able to, you know, this is a cardinal square. Cardinal energies are Aries, Capricorn, and so they're all about actions, and they all take actions in different ways. So with Mars in this intellectual sign, in this communicative sign of Aquarius, says that, you know, this is that the best way for us to move right now, the best way for us to act right now is still in communication. And there is, you know, there's I think that we're all developing a sort of talent, you know, mentally and in our minds, and maybe even intuitively, in learning more about ourselves and how to adapt through this time, and how to take care of ourselves, how to be healthy. And so, you know, wait, I don't even have Chiron on. I got to turn Chiron on. You can see Chiron right here. I didn't have that. That's an asteroid, and it's actually right beside Mercury right now. Mercury's communication. It's sharing knowledge. It's making decisions in Aries. So we're having to make personal decisions, which are ones that are, you know, bringing us health. We're having to ask other people for help. We're having to ask others, you know, what is it that you're doing? Can you share that with me? And so, you know, that's actually a positive thing. There's a lot of talent globally, you know, and as a whole that's developing. That's what this aspect right here is, what we call a quintile. So it means that there is this talent that we're all developing, or this realization that we're all developing, and that's something that's going to grow. And I do want to point out that around April 23rd, Mercury is going to be doing the same thing as the Sun is doing today, which is squaring Capricorn, Jupiter and Pluto in Capricorn. So that means from a mental standpoint, from a standpoint of our minds and making decisions, that's going to be between April 23rd and April 26th that we're, having some more like, okay, let's think very carefully before we take this action. Let's not be impulsive. Let's not be impatient. Let's really concentrate on what's really healthy. And I heard today as I'm, driving to do an errand, I had to go up to the store, I heard on the radio that there's a lot of states that are, at least two handfuls of different states that are talking about how they're going to reopen the state, so there's definitely got to be steps involved in this for it to be, because we don't know, we're in uncharted territory, and that's what Aries is about, is a pioneer. So, I guess they're going to test it, and there could be some news at that time. It says, wait a minute, don't go too fast, don't push this, don't, so that's what squares do. They tell us, okay, this is a time that we're meant to look at different ways of acting, or, thinking or making decisions. And so that's going to be important. And I'm going to come back here though, and I also want to talk about, so I've got today on the screen. I also think that this Venus in Gemini, this part of the charts is banks, lending institutions, it's, other people's money. It could be like the stock market. So, and it's probably, people getting news about relief that is coming our way in the area of resources. So that's important to know, that there is a door there, that there is some relief. That's what this is what we call a trine. And trines bring us a sense of relief. And so I wanted to point that out. That's something that's going to be, helpful information, helpful knowledge. Even people strategizing together to make decisions. That's going to be another area of this. And I had some dates also that I wanted to point out that, where the steps are involved. Whenever you have planets go retrograde, like, for instance, April 26th, Pluto is going to go retrograde. And that means that whenever retrograde, it lasts till fall. So that's the first, and that's a powerful, powerful conductor of what we're experiencing right now in business and government. And, so that means that the outward motion is going to slow down, and we're going to be looking at internal ways to process this and look for solutions that bring us a sense of being able to somehow figure out some way. We can't control this, but we can figure out, from an internal point, what is it that possibly could change this, or, give us some strength in this. And then we have like Saturn. Saturn is going to go retrograde May 11th. And Saturn is a planet of restriction, of karma. Like, I don't know how many people saw my email today, but I did my best to get it out as soon as I could. But Saturn in Aquarius is, like I talked about, this is our 4th week of doing this, but 3 weeks ago, I talked about Saturn in Aquarius, and that it would mean our work now becomes in our communities, in our in our friendships, what are our goals as a whole. Our work becomes in networking. Our work becomes strategizing. Our work becomes thinking, and just thinking about what's best for everybody. And so that planet is going to go retrograde May 11th. And so that's going to be another internal, our work becomes more internal now. And so, like I said earlier, retrogrades become times that we look for solutions, look for how do we fix this, and so we end up revisiting, reviewing. And so these are important dates to recognize, because the outward motion is not going to be like it is now. We're going to be looking for answers. And Venus is going to be retrograde May 12th. And that lasts until June. So that means that resources, in Gemini, it's going to be, we're going to be really gathering information from a different standpoint. There's going to be a lot of internal resources that are recognized. It's, where we look for answers, like I said. So relationships, how we value our communication systems. So that is going to be another time of turning inward and to look for answers. A lot of times while Venus is retrograde, we reevaluate, what are our resources, what is it that we love, what is it that we value. Reevaluate relationships of all kinds, but it's going to be a lot of, Gemini is communicating, looking at both sides of things. In all of those areas. So that starts May 12th. And so we're going to go through that process till about June 25th with Venus retrograding. And then Jupiter, so we've got almost a handful of planets that are going to go retrograde starting the end of April and into the beginning to the middle of May. Jupiter goes retrograde May 14th. And so Jupiter's all about expansion. It's about truth. It's about understanding. It's about optimism. And in being in Capricorn, one of the things that we've really got to watch out for with all this Capricorn energy is fear. And because Capricorn is a planet that says, I'll give you resources, but I'm going to ask you to work really hard for them, to build them, to design them, and that's step by step by step. So there's a process involved here. But my point is that I wanted to point out to everyone that, we do have a relief of outward motion that's going to come up, over the course by the end of April, going into May. So you're gonna feel that when these planets go retrograde. It's gonna be different. It's gonna bring change. It's gonna bring, we're gonna be looking for the answers inwardly, where right now we've been for 4 weeks now almost, really, put into, what do we call it? Social distancing. And so, I know when I've been out and I look at people, there's just been so much fear. And so it's been a period of, I think, of adjustment too. And that's what these aspects are. They're aspects of adjustment. And how do we, like North Node is, how do we nurture and care for ourselves? So we are all making a lot of adjustments, and adjusting to being alone, adjusting to interacting only through, our Zoom and different platforms that like FaceTime, all of those things. Those platforms are so valuable, so valuable right now. And the other thing that's showing up here is that there is some good fortune that's is coming through. This is part of fortune, and it's in trine to Neptune. So that's, and being really recognizing and realizing that there is hope, and that we we are, there's something here happening that, Neptune can be resolved. There is some level of resolve that's starting to happen here. So that's really important to recognize, and that there's adjustments being made by everyone. It's taking incredible level of patience and compassion and understanding. And so all of that is really, really, really important to note here. Let's see, let's look at, I'm going to move this ahead by the day. So start moving it ahead. Tomorrow, we're going to have the moon. And as I talked about last week, the moon is really important to us because it influences our emotions, our feelings, our unconscious reactions. And being that it's going to be in Aquarius, it's bringing that intellectual stimulation, and we're able to be a little bit more detached. Aquarius is more of a detached sign, an intellectual sign, and it's going to, tomorrow evening, it's going to be in trine to Venus. So there's going to be some good interaction, some, maybe some level, there's going to be some level of relief that people are beginning to feel in their resources. So, but it's a lot, I think spreading news, spreading good information is what a lot of what this is about. So, moon in Aquarius is going to stay there. She's usually in a sign for 2.5 days. And so the next day, the 16th, Thursday, is also in Aquarius. So we're still, emotionally being inspired or influenced to look at things from a very intellectual standpoint, and for our mass consciousness, which is Aquarius as a whole. So we actually see two aspects here which are really helpful. This is tomorrow night, because I've got it the same time every day, but we're still seeing this, this cardinal energy is going to start to break up. This is Thursday, means it's starting to separate. So it's actually a good thing, seeing that relief, so to speak. And the next day, we do have the moon on the 17th, which is Friday, the moon in Pisces. So it's going to, it's going to trine the North Node, which means that we're feeling like, there's a depth of sensitivity that's present here. Pisces is one of the most sensitive signs of all. And so it's going to become very important as we start to head into the weekend, that we all stay present in the moment. That's going to be the best possible emotional response, because to be jumping ahead or into worry or fear, and we're going to have to all remind each other of this, because, there's just because I'm lucky to be able to interpret this for you, and I'm so happy that I have this skill, but, we're all feeling this. And we all have a sense of, this is, moon in Pisces is going to bring a lot of sensitivity, but music is helpful for when you're feeling, music, or doing something that's creative, or, allowing your imagination to take you into, positive avenues, or meditation, or, just, if you got a pool, swim, that'll be helpful, because that's a water sign. So there's a lot of emotion attached to that. And that's Friday. And let's see here, what else do I see? Things don't change a lot day by day, but the moon does have a strong influence on us. And so it's important to look at that. And so by Saturday, we're halfway through. That's a day that you're really going to want to do something to keep yourself grounded, to keep because we're going to have the moon square Venus that day. So that brings a lot of sensitivity and just really being present, because that's what we call a mutable square. So it can really, it can really stimulate you to go, oh gosh, I got to do this. I got to be doing this. I got to be doing all that. And so there's a level of that can easily come in of anxiety. So it's really important that we're aware of that. That's why I'm, talking about this, because I think it helps. Awareness is very helpful, and just being present, very in the moment, and, reminding yourself of that as we go through the day is really important. The next day, which is Sunday, the moon moves, is still in Pisces by evening, but it's going to shift that night into Aries. So, so it's going to be a very sensitive weekend where we're just going to have to make sure that we're, doing what we can to stay present. That's the mindfulness, present, being creative. Again, that's Pisces, because we don't want to go into that place of just feeding into that emotion. So it's that's just probably my most important points about the weekend. And so if you can just plan to have things that are going to keep you from, present in the moment, that's going to be the most helpful thing. I can't stress that enough. And then by Monday, the moon is in Aries. So it is, early in the day, it's going to square the north node, the south node, which is our future and our past. So that means that we're, going to want to take it slow, take it easy as that day begins, and be careful about being emotionally, responding impatiently to responding impatiently. So that's going to be really important, because we do have that Aries type of influence going on with the moon in Aries. So that's going to be the most important thing. And I wanted to also, so this is Monday, then Tuesday, we're going to have the moon in Aries again, and we'll meet back again next Tuesday night. But I just want to point out that, all this, as we're getting through the month of April, and then, the sun moves into Taurus, probably it moved in on the 20th, or actually the 19th was when the sun moved into Taurus. So we're going to have a shift, and the sun's going to we're going to shift into, Taurus is more of a stable sign, but it's also about our resources and, earthly things. And so the sun begins to get close to Uranus, which is a planet of, awakening, unexpected, unpredictable. And so we're going to have some earthly shifts that begin to happen right here. And it's like we're, I would have to say, from the most positive way that I can look at this, because it is quite stressed, because it's squaring Saturn. And, so this is a time where we're having to realize that our old ways are not going to work. Our old ways of, earning money, our old ways of succeeding, our old ways, change is really in the air as we get close to that new moon, which comes in on Tuesday. And you can see here's the new moon right here. And this is, it's actually Wednesday night when this new moon actually on the Eastern daytime occurs. And I mean, it is a pretty stressed new moon. So we are certainly in the, in the process of surrendering some really our old ways of, you know, it's going to bring change to all of us, even more than we have right now. So this is a lot more though about resources and what that's going to look like, what those changes are going to look like. That's basically our challenge at this time, is to realize, okay, we're going to have to do things in a little bit of in different ways. And I wanted to, does anybody have any questions right now? Because I'm going to open that up if anybody has questions. Okay, so what I maybe in the process of talking, you know, going further forward, there'll be some things that you want to talk about or ask. So please feel free to do that. But last week we talked about, you know, I know Raj asked, when is, you know, really wanted to know, when is this going to be over? And you know, my answer to that is still that it's gonna take us some time, because we have, you know, there's steps involved in it, and that's what I tried to address with the retrogrades, talking about the retrogrades earlier, that these are all steps of the motion of things changing. So that's you know, we have to recognize the little things here along the way, because they're very, very important. And one thing I did do is I looked up charts for all the, you know, the times that those 4 times in history that I talked about, was like the Black Death. I created a chart for that, which I think we saw last week, but I actually found out that that was between, this is just history, of the times that Jupiter, Saturn were all in the same sign, and what it brought to Earth was major transformations. You know, a lot of, what Pluto does is it brings death so new life can come. So that's the Black Death was 1347 to 1350. And so let me just show you that chart. I've got actually 4 charts that I want to show you tonight. And what's interesting, the interesting commonality of all of those was Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn. Let me see, the Black Death, we talked about that last week. Let me go get that chart. That was, again, at 1347 to 1350. So you can see that these are not things that, you know, influences that go away really fast. They take their path. As you can see, Pluto, Saturn. I made it all these charts for April, because that's the time where there's, you know, typically when the calendar year for astrology starts over is Aries. But you can see there's a whole collection here of, you know, Saturn, Pluto, Moon, Mercury, the Sun, all, and this is actually 1350, around the end of the Black Death. That, you know, that was not an easy time on Earth either. And then I looked at, I wanted to see the common factor, like we talked about last week. And so the Spanish flu, there it is. I created the chart, because last week I kind of got stuck and couldn't figure out, okay, wait a minute, how do I do this? But here's the Spanish flu. And this was 1919, which was, because it really took place between 1918 and 1920. And it was actually, it didn't start in Spain. It actually started in New York, I found out through research. And, you know, this was I think my daughter told me around the end of the war, and that the military personnel is what, where it began to show up. But we can see right here, we've got Pluto, and Jupiter in Cancer, and that's a common theme. I mean, Saturn had joined up with it earlier, but I don't see it as, it's not the same exact thing, but it's very similar as to when we had Pluto and Jupiter in Capricorn, which I want to also point out, which happened in January of this year, that whole cluster of energy became very powerful. So what I wanted to point out about this is that right now we have Pluto, Jupiter, and Capricorn. As you remember from the chart before, we had that's the opposite sign. So this was actually a time that there was major transformations that were happening with families, with people from a very root level. There was a lot of changes in the way we cared for each other. And this was really, really huge at this time. And so I just wanted to show you this, that there's this common bond, this common string here. And then I looked at 1947, which was when the polio epidemic was. And let me show you that, because again, there's another common string here with Pluto and Saturn. So there's polio. And this was, crippling to people. A lot of people recovered from it, but a lot of people did not. So we see Saturn and Pluto again. And in medical astrology, Leo rules the heart, the spine. It rules, Leo is a sign that rules over creative expression. So there were and it affected a lot of children. Leo's a sign for children, that rules over children and that, capacity of creativity. So it's kind of interesting just seeing this in the charts, and that, these planets were close together again, and Saturn would have joined up. So, but my point is that this is something that we're going to go through phases of experience with. And that's because these are far out planets, and especially Pluto, long coming in and long going out. And again, this year, we're going to have 2 more times that Saturn joins up with Pluto, once during the retrograde in June, and another time closer to the end of the year when they go direct, and they, in the fall, they go to direct, and then we get that forward outward moon. And so it can be a great time for answers. It can be a great time where we find resolution, where we find, we do a lot of research and we find answers. So I just wanted to show you this chart because this was during the polio epidemic. And then there's that common theme again. And then the last one is the AIDS epidemic, which I created a chart for that also. That was really interesting. I didn't know really where to put them, create these charts for Earth. So I thought, what, let's just do New York. And it was interesting that when we talked about, the Spanish flu, that actually did originate from New York. So, okay, so here we go again. This is 1982. And that was the time of the AIDS epidemic, and we can see Pluto and Saturn here together again. But they're in the sign of Libra at this time. And it's interesting that 3 times of these historical events with Pluto and Saturn were all cardinal signs. That meaning it was about actions that we're taking that caused, or these epidemics, were rooted from or, came from. And this one was, we were really going through in 1982, there was a lot of, awareness about relationships and and the types of relationships that were causing these epidemics and what that looked like, what was changing, what was, this was another, like I said, cardinal, it means about activities. Libra is the sign of relationships. And so it meant that there were major transitions on Earth in the types of relationships that were developing and what needed to be changed, what needed to be transformed, what we needed to take responsibility for, again, with Saturn, and where the restrictions needed to be. So I wanted to bring up these 4 charts for everybody to see that, to understand that this is going to take some time for us to move through. And it's going to take a great deal of will and adaptation. And one thing that's for sure around, like at the beginning of May also, we're all going to be really beginning to adapt at that time. Let me just get a chart up here. Hang on a second. Take this chart off and just bring it back to what I'm talking about is the North Node, meaning our direction, what is going to be beneficial. That's what the North Node is about. It's a, it points us where we should be focused on. And, it's been in Cancer for quite some time. And come the beginning of May, it's going to move into Gemini. So Gemini is a mutable sign. So it means that, there's this adaptation, there's this mutation that's beginning to happen. And, for us, we're all going to probably be communicating much different ways than we ever did. And it's, the good thing I think about it is that Gemini is going to be, the sign that's highlighted for all of us as a whole. And the past, the South Node's going to be in Sagittarius, which is about, laws. It's Sagittarius is travel, far travel. We're going to have, there's going to be, the way we used to travel around is going to be a thing of the past. The way that we study, that's Sagittarius, there's going to be past ways that we're going through adapting. This is another important time for us to be aware of. Does anybody have any questions on the things that we've covered so far?
So, Andrea, I have a question about the bad times. I don't know how to say it, but the bad times that are coinciding with with Pluto and Saturn, or Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter. So would that also be similar to like we lost the first person on March 1st, and now 5 weeks later, we had 25,000 people in the country lost. So if you look at their personal charts, would that also show up in the same way for the individuals?
Yes. Those were times of where there was a lot of, Pluto rules over death. And it actually is the ruler of pandemics and epidemics and things that change things forever. And so that was what was showing up in all of those charts. Wherever Pluto, that's one of the things that Pluto does. And in being in Capricorn, our government is going to be, in our business and the ways of doing business are going to change drastically. So yes, and those charts, that was why I thought I'd create them, just to show that Pluto and Saturn were all, and one of them was Jupiter. Jupiter rules expansion. We're all, joining together at those times. And those were major markers historically of challenging times. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. So if we look at those, because all this happened like so suddenly for so many of them,
Mm-hmm.
so it's possible that if you look at, if they looked at their charts, they would have Pluto and Saturn or something, another planet.
Yeah, it's mainly Pluto and Saturn, but as you can see here, just like in back in, I think it was it the Spanish flu, we had Pluto and Jupiter together, and we have them again, but we have Saturn also. So, like, yeah, we could look like forward in time, and you know, we actually, astrologers were talking about this time for a long, long, long time, saying this would be a very challenging time. And one thing that they just didn't know the degree of how it was going to play out, even though they knew it would be huge. I mean, you don't have this combination of planets come together and not have some life-changing events happen. And I know from doing personal readings for so many for so long that when you go through a Pluto transit, your life is never going to be the same. You're going to go through major transformation in your life wherever that whatever is being aspected by Pluto or Saturn, like this, people that are really heavily affected by this are mainly, Capricorn is actually represents older people, like tradition and old ways and old things. And, so it's, I'm not surprised that the elderly are being the ones that are most affected by this because of the Capricorn energy. I mean, I've heard some stories that I wouldn't repeat. I know we all, you can watch the news and see what's happening, but yeah, certainly it's a planet, a very powerful influence that Pluto brings, and it's long coming, stays. It goes through different stages of how it influences us because of its retrogrades, but as it draws near, it just changes it's life changing. So like I said before, people that are from the Cancer, Pluto and Cancer generation, or the tail end of it, they're the ones that are being affected the most by this. Those are the elderly, because they were born during that time where Pluto was in Cancer. So this is for them, even people that are have Cancer energy in their chart, meaning, they're born between June 21st and July 21st, they are feeling levels of opposition that they just can't control what happens. They can't, they've got to go with it because that's there's no other way that you can deal with it, just except going through it. So, but it definitely, the world is not going to be the same when we come out of this. It's going to be restructured. It's going to be, there's our old patterns, our old ways of doing business are going to be so different. So none of us knows what that's going to look like, but we're I don't really have those answers of what that's going to look like, but it's just not going to be the same as it was. There's going to have to be, it's like the way we put things back together has to be different than what it was. This is an earth sign, so the effects to the earth have been life-changing. And I mean, I see it, people's disrespect for earth and not taking care of the earth, and just I mean, it's very sad when I go out and when I walk, seeing trash on the ground and, the way people just, disrespect it. It's sad. So that has to change. It really has to change. And Uranus going through Taurus is one of the major factors in that too. One thing I did, it is going to take, it's probably going to take a couple years for us to put things back together, at least. And this is going to be, we're going to experience, we're going to have to, all our consciousness is going to have to shift about how we take care of Earth, how we farm the Earth, how we, what kind of, Taurus is a material sign. Uranus breaks up the old. Says, that's it's actually an intuitive sign, Uranus. So it's going to bring, your intuition is going to become a lot more heightened about Earth and about how we use our materials, how we use our money, how we, all of that. We're all going to go through big changes there, and especially I think. Let me just. Oops. Okay, so I just had to let her come in. Yeah, so did I answer that question, Raj?
Yes, it's very clear now.
Okay, yeah, it's, does anybody else have any questions on any of this or want to share any positive insight you have, or, because I think everybody could really use some of that right now.
Hi, Andrea. I just joined. I'm sorry I'm late.
It's okay. Hi, Sarah. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. We're we're kind of getting closer to the tail end of the meeting tonight. But did you have any questions on and anything that we've been discussing? I don't know. You just came in, but
Yeah. I see a lot of opposition in squares.
yeah, a lot of opposition in squares. That's the challenging times and the things that we can't control and things that are, that's present right now. So, yeah, we did talk about the next week. And so there is, there is some areas of relief. So this recording is going to go out for everybody to review. And along with, everything we talked about with those times in history that were so monumental and transitional and transformational. And does anybody out there have any news about your state and about what they're talking about as far as plans for reopening?
I know in Massachusetts, they haven't really given us any information about reopening or any new updates as far as, moving things along. I think everyone's still pretty much in their houses, and I think we'll be here until, obviously until they tell us otherwise, but there hasn't really been any talk of anything, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just saying earlier that I heard on local news today that that there's almost two handfuls of states that are coming to the table to talk about what that's, what a plan could be for that. California, I heard Massachusetts, I heard Texas, I heard, oh gosh, I can't even remember all the states that were mentioned. So
I know the governor in Massachusetts today said they're looking at the next 2 weeks as, maybe things getting a little bit worse. They set up hospitals at my son's base. They set up one at Melrose High with 200 beds, and they're hoping not to use them, but they're setting them up because of what they feel the next 2 weeks are going to be.
Right.
And that's in Mass. New Hampshire, our governor said he's thinking the first week of May is when we're going to peak. We've been going up. Like today, just today alone, there was over 1,300 cases, 88 deaths just today in New Hampshire. And we've been doing pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So I can kind of see the trend of heading towards the first week of May.
Yeah. I mean, it's what the astrology is showing that, you know, those steps are going to be, you know, the first one I think that's actually really important is that Pluto, when it turns retrograde April 26th, because that's going to slow down the outward spread, I think, of death, of huge impact, I would say.
Well, last week, Andrea, you had said we're going to be glad when this week is over. We're going to have some surprises. Is that over with? I mean, last week was, I think, typical of what we kind of all expected.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. There wasn't anything that shocked me because I'm keeping up with the news and
Mm-hmm.
a little bit with the weather. But is that over with the way you felt last week?
Well, I'm just, you know, from a standpoint of looking at the chart, actually Mars is past squaring Uranus, so that's actually breaking up. So
Mhm.
that's you know, that's Mars is about movement, about activity, and you know, and people, and I felt as long as along with many other astrologers that could be people getting, you know, angry and reacting to, okay, we don't want to do this anymore, but you know what I mean? So we're passing that right now, the Mars square Uranus. That's a good thing. I mean, it's a passing, it's already passed.
Oh,
It's
good.
already passed. We're already past that. So, you know, it could have, so it's passed. So let's just leave it as being passed. But like I talked about with, you know, Aries is, I think it's a lot of frustration that people are feeling, and being able to think positively. And with the sun in square to Pluto, Jupiter, and the moon, the sun, like I said, is our health, our well-being, our vitality. And it's right now we're in the last square of this moon cycle, which began at the end of March. And when we started this, you know, meeting, so this is the fourth one we've been meeting. So, so this is like a caution for us to still be careful not to make any impatient decisions. It's, you know, like I talked about earlier, we still need to be careful about, very, very careful, because this square is still pretty strong. And then Mercury, like I talked about, between April 23rd and the 26th, that's going to be the challenge. Is what decisions can we make? What, you know, what are our ideas for forward movement? What are our thoughts? And there's going to be a caution around that also. So that's what I was talking about in the beginning. You know, I think the Mars square Uranus was the shock that we felt last week, the shock that we were all, you know, experiencing about this sudden, unexpected changes on Earth. And I think that was a lot of what the Mars square Uranus was about, because Aquarius is our communities, you know, our friends, maybe even hearing news about people that we know that, you know, it was shocking. Because, you know, Uranus, it can be, it's a, you know, even though you know that you're hearing about this, it's unexpected. You know, it's like that's something I wish I could take some action to change, and there's not really anything you can do. So I think that was a lot of what that influence was. Does that answer your question, Lisa?
Yeah, I think it does. Yep.
Yeah. You know, I was hoping, and a lot of astrologers were saying this, I did see a lot of people, you know, like on even astrologers and scientists that were, you know, delivering information, and you could feel their peak of frustration about, you know, wanting to offer good news, but there's just, that's not, you know, what's coming out. So we're getting past that. So that's actually a really good thing.
Andrea, when does Pluto go into retrograde?
April 26th.
And then when does Saturn go into retrograde?
Saturn goes on May 11th.
Do you think there's going to be, because you had said in the past that that when planets go retrograde, people tend to look, or things tend to look inwardly versus things affecting us outwardly. Do you think there's going to be more something more about vaccines, or like people are going to be investigating like how to fix this problem with vaccines, or some type of
Remedy.
yeah, because if there's going to be inward reflection then about this, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about in the very beginning, was that when, so we have Pluto going retrograde April 26th. And so that's going to be reversed from outward movement of all, you know, so much death. It's, you know, retrogrades are a time where we have a series of them. It's a time where we look for answers inwardly. We research and we revisit, we review. We look for those, you know, those resources inwardly. So we have April 26th being a time where we're going to have Pluto going retrograde. Saturn goes retrograde May 11th. And those are the two planets that were really, you know, came together January 12th. So that's going to be a time where there's a lot of, you know, it's going to be a big shift. It's going to be a time of adjusting. And Venus goes retrograde May 12th. So we've got like one right after the other after the other. May 12th is Venus retrograde. May 14th is Jupiter retrograde. So a lot of, you know, Jupiter is too research. And Saturn is, you know, that becomes our responsibility to look inside for, you know, where's our work going to be? And that's going to be reviewing things. So it can be even a time where we're digesting the outer experiences. And yes, it can be, you know, they may say, you know, we've found something that we'd like to try, or we'd like, you know, that through our research. So, but with retrogrades, it's all about finding the answers inwardly. And then when the planets go direct, that's when we again have the outward movement. So it could be that that is a time where we get some answers. And I mean, there's going to be a lot of, all the outer planets go retrograde 5.5 months out of the year. And then we even have Mars. Mars is going to be retrograde September 9th through November 14th. And that's going to form aspects to this Pluto, Capricorn, Saturn, Capricorn. Because Saturn's going to go back into Capricorn, and it's going to go back to be together with Pluto again. And that's this summer during the retrograde. So that could be a time where some things start to come together. Yeah, it's definitely going to be a path of a complete change in our world.
You know, Andrea, that's a good point. I'm sitting here thinking about, in my life, the people that are talking about holistic healing, vitamins, try not to go to the hospital, don't go to the hospital, you know, unless you have to. I think people are going to be changing, meaning instead of going to the hospital for a back operation, you would go to a chiropractor. Instead of getting on meds, you would try to do extra vitamins. A girlfriend of mine just fell and needed stitches. She didn't want to go to the hospital. Her son, you know, did the twist band-aids for her, whatever, the butterfly band-aids for her, and she's healing herself. So maybe this is going to, going into yourself, going inwards, we're going to realize we can do a lot of the healing ourselves rather than just at a drop of the hat going to the doctor or the hospital.
Right. Yeah, I think that's truly so.
So the
you know,
healthcare might be changing.
yeah, definitely. Well, I know I have a client who's a nurse, and she's a cancer, and she's got a lot of cancer energy. And it's like I was talking about earlier, she's in Connecticut, and she said nobody's coming in for surgery, and that's what she is, the surgery, you know, aftercare nurse.
Mm-hmm.
And she said there's, you know, these surgeries that were scheduled are all being put on hold unless they're an emergency. And then, but there's some, you know, there's also been some, she experienced some pretty crazy things happening, like the hospital, because they're hurting financially because there's no surgeries. So they to keep her working, they moved her to doing tests for the virus, and she was, you know, she was terrified because she has an elderly husband. She's like 25 years younger than him, and so she was terrified of it, that she could bring it home to him.
That's horrible.
So, yeah, so, you know, but, you know, just take the precautions that we can, and, you know, that's what we can do.
Andrea, so I don't want to be the bearer of bad news or bring anything negative up that could happen potentially, but when these planets come out of retrograde, they're going to go direct, and they're going to be basically in the same place that they were before. That's a little terrifying. Do you think that this could potentially, we could have like a relapse? But the other thing I wanted to add to that was, because I think that it was the first time we had this video conference, we talked about the North Node and how it's in Cancer. And you mentioned that, you know, like right now, because it's in Cancer, we're focused on home and doing home things, which is almost kind of convenient because we are home and we have to be here. But it's soon going to move into Gemini. And when that happens, we're going to be focused on, you know, like what you mentioned, communication and email and telephone calls. So is that going to bring, like, I feel like it's just going to kind of bring, like, people are going to be like chomping at the bit, for lack of a better term, to get out and talk to people, but we're going to be forced, if this relapses again, I don't know, I just see more of a conflict, but I could be wrong.
Well, I was thinking about that a lot today, and what I thought is during the retrograde, we're most likely going to find some answers, and that when we come out of it, it's not going to be, even though we're revisiting the same energy, it's going to be the third pass. So it's the third time that we're experiencing the same energy. So it is possible that we do revisit some things that were, you know, from back in the beginning of the year, but they are going to be transformed in many ways because it's the third pass. Just like, think about Mercury retrograde. It has a purpose. It has, you know, we all get so frustrated with it because it's the planet of movement. thinking about things in different ways wherever it is in our chart. So it is really important to know where this is in your chart from a personal standpoint, even though, you know, as a whole we're being affected. But like Mercury retrograde, my point is that the planet goes over the same area 3 times. And we get, with Mercury, we get answers to things that, you know, we get information that we didn't have before.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we find the means to making better decisions during Mercury retrograde. We, you know, we do visit that same energy again, but we have more information this time.
It's kind of
So-
like in hindsight.
Yes.
You know, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't feed too much into the fear part of that, because it is going to be transformed, because it's just about, you know, like I said, I wanted to use that scenario about Mercury retrograde because that's what I know, you know, I've tried it both ways. I tried making decisions during Mercury retrograde a long time ago just to test it. And sure enough, it was changed. Whatever knowledge I had, whatever decision I made, I had to revisit it. I mean, it's a great time for fixing things. That's what retrogrades are for. That's what they, you know, we're going to have to, you know, look, that's the path. So it only goes like Pluto will go, Pluto goes April 26th from 25 degrees of Capricorn back to 22 degrees. And so let's look at, let's put Pluto in here in Pluto retrograde. So let me get rid of these controls here. So here's Pluto when it turns retrograde. You can see it's at 25 degrees and it's right beside Jupiter. So, you know, Jupiter expands on things too, but it also brings knowledge. It brings information. And we can start to see that that we've got these blue lines are typically indicators of relief. So, but so my point is, okay, Pluto's retrograde April 25th, and it goes direct.
This is next week.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And it goes October 4th. It turns, you know, you can see the numbers are black now, so it means it's direct.
Okay.
And you can also see, you know, that these 3 planets are still together because they've all gone retrograde and they've come back together. But let's see, Saturn, what did Saturn go back to? Let me look. Saturn goes back to 20, it goes from 1 degree Aquarius back to 25, which is where Pluto is right now. So, you know, Pluto's going to take longer to leave and get out of that energy. It won't be till the beginning of next year that really that this is starting to be more behind us. It's actually, you know, if you look at history from those other epidemics, it was like a 2 or 3 year period of the whole process, you know, going through the whole process. So, but it is going to be steps. That's this right here. Mars goes retrograde on, that's going to be, you know, it is possible we could have a resurgence, and we have to learn how to, you know, we really do need to act in different ways, but we're going to have more information. We're going to have more knowledge. We're going to have a lot of research that's going to be done. I know they're working really, I mean, scientists, it's just a huge focus. But Mars retrograde starts at 28 degrees of Aries on September 9th and goes back to 15. So there's going to be a period in the fall where we're going to have to, you know, there's going to have to be some real realization.
You know, I work at Harvard Law School, and I support one of the professors there. And there was some, talk this afternoon, because actually what you're saying just reminds me of what we were talking about this afternoon. We were talking about people coming back to school in September. And a lot of the universities, whether it be Harvard or any other university, have a lot of students that travel internationally or come from different countries to go to school. So they were saying that in the fall, we might actually not, the classes might not start up again. They might continue to have classes online. So what you were saying about how Mars is retrograde, it just makes me think of like less action. People won't be.
Yep, there will be less action. And I was talking about that earlier, actually, with the South Node in Sagittarius. This is the past, the way we've traveled. Sagittarius is higher education, it's laws, it's our, it's far travel, it's foreign lands. So the past ways are, we're going to be looking at the past and how we can, Gemini, how can we make better decisions around travel, and it'll be a lot less far travel. It'll be a lot more short, that's what Gemini is, more short travel, not far, close travel. And communicating in different way. Our new direction is communicating, networking in different ways. And so that's, it's going to be a couple of years of different focus than we've had in the past. Definitely won't be able to travel like we used to. I don't think that's going to be something of the past for some time.
Like constantly traveling internationally, and like business people traveling to China and the UK, and yeah.
I mean, to travel was just like getting into, far travel has been just like getting into a car and going, because it was so easy. And it's not, I don't think it's going to be so easy. It's going to be, with the South Node in Sagittarius, there's going to be, this is the past way of doing things. This is a new way of doing things, a new focus, a past focus, education, all for, I think that it's going to have to all shift until there's answers. So.
Andrea?
Yeah.
This is Sandy.
Hi.
Hi, I just have a question. As the Earth goes through this shift and transformation, in the charts or in past history, has there been anything, I feel as though if this doesn't get our attention, then there'll be more physical catastrophes like tsunamis, earthquakes. I mean, could that be something that would happen when we go back? Like if we don't get the message that the Earth has given us now?
Well, it's certainly going to look way different, and Uranus is going to bring unexpected Earth shifts, definitely, because that's a planet that none of us really can predict. Uranus, it's the most unpredictable, and it's in the sign of Taurus. And I was thinking about this earlier today. When I teach astrology, we talk about the different house systems, and like Aries is angular. Taurus, the second sign of the zodiac, is succeeding, meaning how we succeed. So I think the answer to your question is that, yeah, we really need to take this very seriously, what's happening on Earth, because definitely the Earth is going to go through change. I don't know how that's going to play out. I mean, we're looking at it from minutely and, day by day, but from a long, I mean, Taurus rules over our agriculture. It's Earth and how we succeed, how we, pretty much how we, what our values are. So it's changing values, it's changing Earth, it's changing Earth patterns, it's changing of agriculture, it's awakening to what we, need to realize. So, it's Uranus can be shaking. It's like ground moving too. It can be very shocking the way it plays out. So, I want to be very careful that I don't put anything, we can see right here in October, Uranus, even though it's just turned retrograde, it's going to trine Venus. So we do have some positive things happening. And I think as a whole, it's going to be better, whatever the outcome is. It's hard to predict exactly what those, I think the answer to your question is, yeah, we're going to have experiences, that we can't really predict or expect, but we do know that we have to pay attention to it.
Thank you.
Andrea, do you know the next time the Pluto and Saturn will make an aspect?
Yeah, this summer.
After that, like after they come out of retrograde and then come back together, is it like another 8 years or 10 years down the road?
Oh, I haven't looked at it. I haven't looked at that. To be honest with you, I haven't looked at it.
Probably don't even want to think about it right now.
Yeah, it's probably more than we need to look at right now with where we're at. So, but no, I haven't looked at it, but that's something that, in the future, it's at least 30 years away before we have another aspect with Saturn and Pluto.
That's good.
It's usually the pattern, if you look at, so yeah, I think we got enough, like you said, enough to deal with right now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Enough bad news for 30 years.
Yeah. I think we're all just adjusting to this change right now, and how very important it is. I certainly know that, for anybody that there was just actually a show I was watching on YouTube of a lady that I think she lives by herself. I live by myself too. So you've got to find ways to fill in those spaces. And how do you do that? And it's, it takes a lot of self-realization to kind of keep us all on board,
Yeah, self-care, self-realization. Yeah, it's hard.
I know. Yeah, I know. Because, yeah. So does anybody have anything that they want to share that they're doing that is, positively supportive?
Well, I'd like to just say on what Sandy had to say about the Earth. What I've been seeing on TV and the news, blah blah blah, how fast it seems to be healing itself.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking about our air is much clearer. The water seems to be clearing up.
Mm-hmm.
Has anybody else seen that?
Yeah.
Yes, I saw that. I saw some things about that on TV. That's fantastic.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me too, Lee. Yeah, it's great.
I saw something about the weather, some about animals, how they're, they're going out in, what was public before now, because there are less people outside.
Yes, they are coming out more. I don't know if that part's good or not, but I'm nervous about them. But up here in New Hampshire, but I was very pleased when I heard about the air. Just heard on the news the other day, go outside and breathe. It's much cleaner now than it was a month ago. And they can see all the fog. I think even in India, Raj, they're noticing a big difference in the air.
Yeah, I heard that too, Lisa. I heard that on was it a CNN reporter was talking about that tonight before I started this. I heard that same thing. And what was it? I just forgot what I was going to say. I don't know. Maybe I'll come back. But, you know, certainly Uranus is the planet of awakening, planet of, you know, our consciousness shifting. So that's definitely happening.
So to Sandy's point, I hope other people are realizing, and we get our priorities. This kind of changes everybody's priorities when it comes to the earth, when it comes to the medicine, you know, the healthcare system. You know, hopefully it's a big awakening for people.
Yeah, and you know what? Also about organization and about, you know, you know, cleanliness. I want to say that too, because Taurus is an earth sign, and so it's taking care of, you know, being conservative. Most earth signs have a certain conservative influence to them.
Mm-hmm.
So Uranus could be changes in our conservation, the way we conserve. And, you know, throwing everything away, people, you know, that awakening also, how that affects our earth. That could be another point about it. So, does anybody else have any questions or anything they want to just bring up before we conclude tonight?
Hey, this is Greg.
Yeah.
Hey, I was just, you know, you mentioned it, something about, and I think this is so interesting to get this on a weekly basis, but you mentioned about teaching in classes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you're planning on doing?
Well, I keep getting asked. I used to teach astrology regularly. I've, you know, written a book, The Language of Astrology, which is all PowerPoint. I haven't published it yet, but, you know, I'd really like to do that. I'd like to teach astrology because I think everybody would benefit by knowing about the world that surrounds them and how to interpret that and what those influences are. So, yeah, I'd like to do that. If I get, you know, if I get enough interest in it, I will certainly do it. I just haven't had my method. I used to teach in the dairy adult education program, and I would teach classes that, you know, in that capacity, but it's just with my change in my location that kind of changed for me. So I definitely could do that online because I have it all up in my Google Drive to teach.
Yeah. Well, as
Greg,
you said, we're going to be doing business differently, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Greg, I was actually thinking the same thing, and I thought to myself, if Andrea has an astrology class, I think I'm going to take it.
Just so I can plug her class, I actually took it back when you were in Derry, Andrea, and it was fantastic. I would love to take it again, actually.
I think it's a good idea. Really good idea.
Yeah, Lauren, you were involved in it. Sarah, did you?
Well, because I hear, you know, it's like, and you and I have had these conversations before. It's like, you know, to learn, you know, the language, like what does this planet mean? And when this planet and this planet are there, what does it mean? And, you know, I know that some people on the call, you know, have that knowledge. You know, I don't. And it's interesting to know because then that could help, you know, maybe all of us, you know, because obviously, you know, there's ups and downs, there's goods and bads about everything. And we're going to be moving through a new transition. And I don't know how this relates to the age of Aquarius or anything coming in. You know, I've heard a lot about that, but I think that the changing of systems and processes and all of that is definitely something that's in the future. You know, I've seen it a long time ago. You know, and I went back and got a degree in sustainability because I realized we aren't living a sustainable society. We aren't living sustainable to Mother Earth. We aren't living sustainable, you know, in a lot of ways. And so I think that this, you know, I don't know, maybe you can comment on how does all these changes have any reflection of the age of Aquarius or anything, or, you know, stuff like that. Anyway, it would be cool to learn more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then I will, you know, I do. The age of Aquarius is the age of, you know, what is Aquarius is about strategy. It's about science, and it's about, you know, the intellect and intellectual knowledge. And so I think that a lot of what we're seeing right now is people waking up to, okay, the world that surrounds us is, it's great to have knowledge about that. So age of Aquarius is, what is Aquarius? We think about all the things that have to do with Aquarius, and it's knowledge that helps everyone as a whole, because Aquarius is a air sign. It's intellectual sign. It's a information sharing sign. So definitely, you know, I know that I make, you know, my decisions looking at astrology, but there's so much. It's just knowing, having that knowledge. It's very helpful.
Well, that's good to hear, Andrea, because I thought the age of Aquarius was about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and I was a little bit nervous.
No, that was the 70s. We already did that.
That was when Pluto was in Leo. That was
Oh no, not Leo.
yeah. That was that a lot of people that were born in, like, you know, they're, because Pluto rules over generations. So that was a change in you know, Leo is the party, you know, where's the party, what's fun, what, you know, how it's a creative sign. So that was a changing of all those things. That's, you know, it was interesting. Last year I went to an astrology conference in Chicago, and 2018 I went, and they had 5 generations of Pluto, people born during the different generations of Pluto. I have that picture, and that was pretty cool to see, because those are all different generations. They're all, you know, Pluto's a generational planet. Wherever Pluto is in your chart is where you're going to go through major transformations in your life. You're, you know, it won't be the same as when you came in. So I appreciate.
Well, good. Maybe next week, Andrea, you can let us know if you're thinking about setting up a class.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I'll start thinking about it and what that looks like, and yeah, I will certainly do. I'd love to. That's one of my favorite things to do, is to teach.
I think it'd be a really good idea, especially with everybody being home so much, you know? You can give a lot of time to study and something for people to do, you know?
Well, I think Greg brought up a good point that, like, I'm listening. I've been listening to you, Andrea, since what, 2007, I think. But I don't really know what I'm looking at, or I just listen to what you say. But Sarah seems to know a little bit more about the signs and what questions to ask. So I think it would be good if we had more knowledge of what we're looking at.
Yeah, it's definitely, there's a lot of analyzing and studying to learn, you know, where, you know, to learn where I'm at, you know, like where I'm at right now. I'm still learning. You're never going to stop learning with astrology. But certainly how to interpret the basics of it. You know, 101 is learning how to interpret your birth chart, your soul's chart. And so that's where you start. You know, you start out there, and there's a lot of really detailed points. And I know people, you know, I know Greg and I have talked about this, that not everybody's going to want to use it to, you know, do readings for other people, but just having like general knowledge, you know, going through it is helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Sarah might have been in, you might have been in maybe the first part of my 101.
I think so. It was a few years back now, but I loved it. It was really good, so informational, and all the charts and things you share. Yeah, I think it's fantastic, and I would love to do it again. And also, I don't know, this is really far off, but if you have like another advanced course that you are ever going to teach in the future, I'd be really happy to take that as well. Because it's like you
Yeah.
were saying, the more you look into it, the more knowledge you gain, and then it's just like a snowball. You can't stop. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I want to put out there for everyone, if you want to tell your friends and your relatives about it too, that would be helpful, because I think the bigger group we have, that, it would be, because people share, and one thing that happens with it, I mean, you're going to first learn how to interpret your chart, and then you can start using it but there's like, so that would be good. Yeah, I will think about how, dates for that, and how when that can start.
Great.
Yeah, so everyone, the link that I have on my homepage and my website, turntothestars.com, is the link that we're going to be using. It's going to be a static link the same link we use every week. So you can just go there and click on it on Tuesday night, and you'll be able to come in.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So I don't have to recreate that every week, and you don't have a different one every week. All right.
Okay.
All right. So, well, everyone, I hope that you have a great, the best week you can have from here to next week. And I want to thank you all for coming on. It looks like this is growing, and that's really awesome. Because Raj, I don't know, did you get my email? Because I did look, and you are on my email list.
Yes, yes. I was sending that to a folder that I created. I looked in there, I found it.
Okay, so I'm glad, yeah, because I looked on there and I go, oh yeah, he's on my email list.
Yes,
So,
yes.
yeah, so I'm glad you figured that out. Okay, well, everyone, again, I hope you all have the best week possible, and be safe and stay well.
You
You
too.
too,
you.
Andrea.
Thank you.
Stay well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye everyone. See you next
Bye.
week.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.